Why do they keep going back to Erika? What is it about these Egyptian planes that were making them spiral? I was only partially right about the plane tracking Charlie. The person the planes were actually tracking for years was Erika. Not Charlie, but Erika was the one being tracked by these planes. And indeed, it turns out that she was correct. She discovered that between 2022 and September of 2025, both of those aircraft showed 68 overlaps with Erika's documented locations.
You're about to hear a story that has unsettled thousands of viewers online. A story filled with unanswered questions, conflicting accounts, and a growing sense that someone, somewhere, hasn't told the full truth. And it begins with a moment that many people still replay in their minds. The update that linked Tyler Robinson's name to conversations involving Charlie Kirk, Erika Kirk, and a wave of speculation that exploded after Candace Owens mentioned Egypt Air during a live stream. What happened next didn't calm anything down. It only added fuel. Tonight, we piece together what people are actually asking and why these questions refuse to go away. Because when a case touches public figures, private lives, federal tracking systems, and a missing young man like Tyler, the public starts to wonder, are we seeing coincidences or are we seeing patterns everyone else ignored? Stay with us, because this investigation opens more doors than it closes. Viewers following the story, you won't want to miss what comes next. Let's begin. From the moment Candace Owens casually referenced Egypt Air during a discussion, online communities reacted instantly. According to her, it wasn't Charlie Kirk the planes were tracking. People expected the topic to end there, but then came the part that changed everything. It was Erika Kirk. Those 5 words spread across forums, TikTok pages, YouTube threads, and message boards like a shockwave, not because they proved anything, but because they created a new line of questioning that nobody had considered before. And once those questions started, they didn't stop. Why was Erika's name involved in a conversation that the public originally tied to Charlie? Was this simply a misunderstanding? A mix-up? A reference taken out of context? Or was it something else? Viewers began asking whether the tracking Owens mentioned was routine, just standard aviation monitoring that happens every day, or whether it suggested something more specific. And once Tyler Robinson's updates surfaced around the same time, people began linking threads that may have never belonged together in the first place. But that didn't stop the speculation. Because when a case already feels heavy with missing information, the smallest detail becomes a spotlight. As the days passed, some online investigators began raising a question that caught everyone's attention. Is this an op, short for operation? A word that carries weight even when used loosely. Of course, no proof suggested anything covert, but the public wasn't looking for proof, they were looking for clarity, and clarity wasn't coming. And with every hour that passed, more questions surfaced. Was Charlie being monitored? If not, why did people think he was? If it was Erika, what was the context? Was it routine? Administrative? Coincidental? And then came the most explosive question, the one that spread because of how outrageous it sounded. Was Erika Charlie's handler? A question born purely from speculation, yet repeated everywhere by people who didn't understand how federal tracking systems work or how easy it is for misinterpretation to snowball. This was not journalism. This was not evidence. This was the internet doing what it does best, connecting dots no authority had verified. But the very fact that these questions gained traction said something deeper about the environment surrounding Tyler Robinson's story. People felt unheard. People felt confused. People felt like the official explanations, if any existed, weren't clear enough. So instead of answers, viewers filled the silence with possibilities. And that silence weighed heavily on Tyler's supporters, who continued asking, why was he involved in conversations about public figures? Who put his name there? Was it a mistake? Was it part of online commentary spiraling out of control? Or was someone using his situation to raise unrelated theories? Every time new information surfaced, the public demanded more. Every time someone connected a new dot, a new wave of questions appeared. And every time the story shifted, Tyler, an individual with real relationships, real fears, and real consequences, became a symbol in a much larger conversation. That is where the guilt settles in. Because somewhere in the middle of this chaos, a young man remains at the center of a case filled with unanswered questions, while the internet debates issues that may never have even involved him at all. This is the part of the story that feels uncomfortable. It forces us to ask, are we helping or are we drowning the truth with noise? Are we getting closer to answers or are we distracting ourselves from what truly matters? As speculation continues, Tyler's name stays in the spotlight, not because of clear evidence, but because the public has a way of pulling unrelated threads into the same knot. And every knot gets harder to untangle. Stay with this investigation. The story is far from complete, and the next update may change everything yet again. Make sure you subscribe so you don't miss what comes next, because the questions are only growing louder and the people demanding answers aren't backing down.
And as more people tried to untangle these competing threads on their own, an unexpected shift happened. New voices entered the conversation. Sources, witnesses, commentators, each bringing small pieces that didn't fit cleanly, yet couldn't be ignored either. One detail surfaced late at night through a message board post from someone claiming to work in aviation logistics. Nothing verified, nothing confirmed, but the timing caught attention. They mentioned that certain tracking alerts can trigger automatically when travel patterns change suddenly or fall outside a person's usual routes. That single statement sparked a new wave of questions. Who changed their travel plans? Was it connected to the timeline the public had been focusing on? Was it unrelated entirely? Nobody could say, but the uncertainty pushed the discussion in a different direction. People began examining the movement of individuals around the dates already under scrutiny. Flight logs, event locations, time-stamped photos, all publicly available, yet presented online like clues to a puzzle that no one had officially acknowledged. In the middle of this digital investigation, a quieter question surfaced, one that cut deeper than the sensational theories circulating across social platforms. Why didn't anyone clarify the confusion earlier? A simple explanation from a credible source could have ended everything in minutes. Instead, silence persisted. And silence gave people permission to keep searching in the dark. You can feel the frustration in every comment thread, every message from viewers trying to understand what they're seeing, every attempt from families, supporters, and concerned strangers trying to separate fact from noise. It's a reflection of something bigger. How easily public interest can overshadow the individuals at the center of a case, and how quickly empathy gets replaced with entertainment when answers aren't offered. Some users claim they noticed patterns in who spoke publicly and who avoided the topic altogether. Others say the quietness felt intentional. And while none of that proves anything, it shows how fragile public trust becomes when people worry they're being left out of the truth. If you're still watching, stay with this investigation. There's more coming. The breakthrough moment happened when someone posted a short clip, an older interview where a spokesperson mentioned external consultations happening around the same time as the events already being analyzed. Those two words raised eyebrows. External consultations with who? For what? And were they connected to the shifting narratives involving Tyler, Charlie, Erika, or the aviation chatter that ignited this entire debate? Again, no concrete link, no accusation, but the overlap in timing was enough for viewers to question whether these consultations were routine or triggered by something the public was never told. And that's when the emotional weight of this case hit harder than ever. Because while theories stacked on top of each other, one reality remained unchanged. Tyler's status still wasn't clear. His family was still waiting. And the people who claimed to care about the truth kept getting pulled toward distractions that offered excitement, but not answers. There's a moment in every investigation where the focus quietly shifts, where the story isn't just about what happened, but what should have happened. This feels like that moment. You start asking yourself, why did so many unrelated names get dragged into a single conversation? Who benefited from the confusion? Who stayed quiet even as speculation exploded across platforms? And why did the people closest to the situation speak so rarely while the loudest voices came from strangers? The more you listen, the more it feels like everyone was watching different pieces of the same story, but nobody was allowed to see the full picture. If this is your first time joining this investigation, consider subscribing so you don't miss the next update. There are developments ahead that could shift the tone of this entire documentary. As new details continue surfacing, investigators, both official and unofficial, keep circling back to the same core issue: the absence of meaningful clarity. It's the kind of void that invites speculation, and once speculation takes hold, it becomes nearly impossible to pull the narrative back toward reality. That's why this story still feels unanswered, why viewers still argue late into the night, why theories grow even when evidence doesn't. And somewhere, beneath the noise, there's a truth that hasn't been spoken.
And as more people stepped forward with fragments of information, an unexpected detail emerged late into the night. Something subtle, something easily ignored, yet deeply unsettling once noticed. A small archive entry appeared on a public transparency site, showing that a series of requests for coordination notes had been filed around the same period viewers have been discussing. No explanation, no accompanying documents, just the acknowledgement that someone, somewhere, was asking for internal clarification. That discovery pushed the public into a new phase of questioning. Who requested those notes? What were they trying to coordinate? And why did the timestamps line up so closely with moments that had already raised attention? You could almost feel the shift as people realized there were layers they hadn't considered. Layers involving communications behind closed doors, discussions that never reached the public, and decisions made without any public record of their intent. For many watching the story unfold, the silence around those notes felt heavier than anything said out loud. Another piece surfaced when a former consultant, speaking anonymously through a recorded message shared online, claimed that multiple organizations sometimes step back from public commentary when the narrative becomes too interconnected. Again, no specifics given, nothing pointing directly at the individuals being discussed. But the phrasing alone fueled a wave of concern. What exactly was becoming too interconnected? Who decided stepping back was safer? And what conversations were happening in rooms the public would never see? It forced people to question whether each unexplained gap was a coincidence or part of a pattern that started long before Tyler's name appeared online. A pattern built on hesitation, caution, and the fear of being associated with a situation already tangled by speculation. As always, these details don't confirm wrongdoing, but they do reveal something uncomfortable. Moments where clarity could have been provided, yet wasn't. If you're still with this investigation, stay close. Updates are coming, and you don't want to miss the direction the story is taking. Soon after the consultant's message circulated, a separate recording surfaced, this time an audio clip captured during a small conference panel months earlier. A speaker referenced monitoring protocols and how they sometimes trigger inquiries from unrelated agencies when timelines overlap. No one in the audience reacted at the time, but now, in the context of everything happening, those words took on new weight. Monitoring protocols, overlapping timelines, unrelated agencies. The public began asking whether these procedures were routine or whether they hinted at something more complex, surrounding the individuals at the center of this confusion. Was this standard oversight? Was it precautionary? Or was someone responding to changes that hadn't been made public? The questions piled up faster than answers could be found, and the sense of uncertainty grew. Meanwhile, people who had been following Tyler's case closely started asking why the adults in the room, the institutions, the organizations, the public-facing figures, hadn't stepped in early to untangle the misalignment of narratives. Why weren't there clear statements? Why did misinformation spread for so long? Why did a young man become caught in a storm of speculation he never asked for? It raises a moral problem that goes beyond this case. At what point do public figures, institutions, and commentators hold responsibility for correcting confusion that affects vulnerable individuals? And at what point does silence become an indirect decision with its own consequences? If you haven't subscribed yet, consider doing so. You'll want to stay informed as this investigation pushes forward. Then came the update that startled even seasoned online researchers, a pattern of travel records from public databases showing sudden adjustments in scheduling, not by any one person, but by several people indirectly connected through these ongoing conversations. None of the adjustments proved anything unusual, yet the timing sparked debate. Were these changes coincidental, part of normal travel, or were they reactions to events that happened behind the scenes? The lack of explanation left space for more theories and more frustration. Because every unanswered question pushed the public further from understanding what truly mattered and closer to speculation that overshadowed the real human impact. And somewhere in that tension, you begin to see the larger failure. A society more equipped to analyze clues than to protect the people caught in the middle of them. This story is still unfolding. New details are coming into focus, and some of them may change how this entire situation is understood. Stay tuned.